A caregiver resigns, the schedule has to be rearranged. Clients become concerned. Team morale takes a hit. Revenue is impacted, and agency owners are left asking the same questions. Why did another great caregiver leave? In today's episode, we're digging into the real reasons behind caregiver turnover and what agency leaders can do build a team that stays. All right. Welcome to our first ever episode of ABS Podcast. If you are an agency owner, an operator, or anyone who's ever had a caregiver call in on Friday afternoon to say, hey, I quit, this episode is for you. Today, we're tackling one of the most pressing challenges in home care right now: why caregiver leave. And what is the best agencies can do doing to keep them. I have two guests who brings something really unique to this conversation. Regina is the owner of Ascension Business Solutions. She spent years at the center of the home care industry and also attending major conferences and events. And she comes from a family that actually owned and operated a home health agency. She has lived this from the inside. And also, Alison is ABS's client relations manager, the person agency owners call when things get hard. This is actually the moment that she needs to shine. She's on the front lines for those conversations every single day. Together, they have a perspective that's rare. One from the inside of running the agency, and also one from alongside agency owners navigating these challenges in real time. We're going to get honest, get specific, and get practical. Now let's start. Let's discuss about understanding the challenge. Regina, I'd love to start with you. I want to understand. And although before we get into the heavy stuff, I have to ask you a warm-up question. You come from a family that owned a home health agency, and now you run a business that serves agency owners every day. Was there a moment, maybe at a dinner table, growing up on an early years of your career, where you thought this industry is going to be your life?
Yeah, thank you for the question and thanks for having me here. Definitely, those conversations were happening quite a bit. The first time we started a home health agency was in 2008. So almost 20 years now in this industry, and having a mom that was a nurse, very typical for Filipinos.
Yeah.
I knew early on that healthcare was going to be in my life
Mm.
forevermore. I know she was heartbroken when I said I did not want to be a nurse and I wanted to be in business, but
Oh,
I'm
so typical for a Filipino mom.
but I am eternally grateful to have a nurse as a mentor, especially in business, because she taught me to be very ethical. She taught me to be very strong and to have resilience.
I love that. I mean, that context is so important for what we're going to talk about today because you didn't just study this industry, you grew up in it, you know? So let's set the stage rather. You attend home care and home health conferences and events like regularly. You're in the rooms where agency owners are talking candidly about what's keeping them up all night. From what you're seeing and hearing across the industry right now, why has caregiver retention become such a defining issue?
Retention is such a defining issue because at the end of the day, home care is a business
Mhm.
and we're selling billable hours, and you can't sell what you don't have, right? And so
Correct.
if caregivers are constantly leaving, I think the much better question that we have to ask ourselves, and what I hear from some of the more successful agency owners is, well, what do we do about it? Right? There's no point in crying over spilt milk. We already know there's several benchmark reports that say that caregivers are going to leave. 70 to 80% of
Mm,
caregivers are going to leave within the first 90 days.
mm,
So, again, instead of asking yourself, why is this? Why don't we evolve that conversation into, well, what do we need to do about it? How do we create strategies, proactive strategies, knowing that this is already going to happen? And those kind of conversations are really what moves the needle. And I love being in the room where these creative ideas are happening, but at the end of the day, it comes down to having the right systems and the right teams in
mhm.
place to carry out that execution of that strategy.
Right, right. And also, let's make the stakes real for our listeners. When a caregiver walks out the door, it's not just an empty shift to fill. What does turnover actually cost an agency, especially in growth and reputation and in the quality of care they can deliver?
So we could look at it several ways. We could look at it at the bottom line.
Hmm.
If a caregiver leaves, there's certain costs associated with having to replace that caregiver. A lot of my clients right now are starting to recognize that you actually need almost a 2 to 3 to 1 ratio, 3 caregivers to 1 client
Hmm.
ratio. And in order to do that, if you look up certain studies, it says it costs about $4,000 every time you have to
Mm.
hire, train, and replace a new employee. That's a lot of money. But there's
4,000.
$4,000. And then there's some of these hidden costs that a lot of people don't recognize as well. What does it what does it cost for your caregivers that have to fill those shifts constantly? The ones that you lean on, the ones that are constantly
Hmm.
saying yes, the ones that are giving up parts of their lives for your business because
Hmm.
you don't have enough people. Those people end up becoming disengaged. And there's a certain study that says that the cost of a disengaged employee
Hmm.
is about 30% of their salary.
Well,
And
that's a lot.
so that is, and you run the cost of burning them out. You run the cost of them leaving you. Your best employees are going to get tired of this reactive mentality, this reactive strategy. It
Hmm.
is not sustainable. And so, there's just, and then there's the missed opportunity cost, right? If you have to tell your clients that is a 24/7 client, I'm sorry, your caregiver quit today, they're not really interested in why. All they care about and all their adult children care about is, okay,
Hmm.
well, is mom going to be safe now? Did
Correct.
I trust the wrong company? Okay, if you can't do it, then I'm going to find someone that can do it. And so there's also those cost of losing business. And so many of those service failures have compounding effects. It can affect your reputation, right? You spend all this money on marketing and getting out in front of all these referrals. They give you a chance and you fumble and you have no backup plan. That becomes unacceptable.
True, true. And also, you have conversations with, agency leaders constantly, both through events and through ABS, like a company. What's the concern you hear most often? Like, or let me repeat the question. What's the concern you hear most often when retention comes up? Like, what's the fear underneath this frustration?
I think when you don't have systems and teams in
Sure.
place
Mm,
that are focused, this is their primary focus, right? Maybe you have too many cooks in the kitchen. And we hear owners say, well, I can do it whenever I have the chance, or my team, they're trying to do it whenever they have a moment. But again, that's a very reactive strategy, if it's a strategy at all, right? And what happens, what I hear the frustration is that recruiting is a numbers game.
True.
You might start off with 100 resumes, but a very, very, very small percentage of those are actually your ideal profile for a caregiver. And then you have time against you.
Hmm.
So those small group of people that are really great caregivers,
Hmm.
guess what? You're competing against 10 other, 20 other agencies that are looking for that exact same person.
Hmm.
So that's where I feel like the frustration is that they're trying to do their best with what they have to get these caregivers. So maybe what the problem is not, again, not just having a dedicated team, a dedicated system, but they don't have operational capacity. And so
Hmm.
they end up with maybe subpar caregivers. Maybe they end up with just putting a warm body in there
True.
and wondering why it never works.
That's right. And I have a follow-up question on that because here's something that I want to push on. Because I know some owners or some owners that's currently listening will think turnover has always been part of this business and it's just a nature of caregiving, you know? So why should agency owners treat retention as an urgent, like urgent right now, rather than accepting as it is, like an avoidable cost of doing business?
I think it always goes back to how are you able to fulfill your mission, right? Why did you get into this business?
Mhm.
A lot of people don't realize how heavy recruiting actually matters, how difficult scheduling is, how problematic billing and understanding all these nuances of home care are. They got into this business because they care. They care deeply. That's one of the biggest common trends that I see with home care owners. There's these backstories, right? Well,
Mhm.
my grandma needed help.
Mhm.
And when I was looking for someone, I was so disappointed. And so I quit my job. I quit my corporate job because I feel like I can do this better. And so, if you want to do that, if you want to fulfill your mission in life, then you have to understand that you have to have the right caregivers. You have to have the right in-house support to support your caregivers. You have to
Correct.
have a culture of excellence. How do you show your caregivers that you love and support them and you want them to be a part of your company? Because at the end of the day, they are the ones taking care of your clients, not you as the owner.
True. Very true.
And so it's like investing in your best assets.
Correct. And well, I cannot agree more. And thank you for those insights, Regina. And at this point, though, I want to know, or I'd like to discuss why caregivers really leave. And Allison, at this point, I want to bring you into the conversation here because this is where it gets really interesting and sometimes a little uncomfortable. So we are going to talk about the real reasons caregivers leave. But in the meantime, first, Allison, you talk to agency owners regularly about their most frustrating staffing challenges. So, what's something an agency owner has to or has said to you about retention that made you think, oh, we really need to unpack this?
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. I actually remember one conversation very clearly because it wasn't what the agency owner said, it was how they said it. They looked genuinely frustrated and said, I don't get it. We pay competitively, we offer bonuses, we're constantly hiring. Why do people still leave? I remember thinking that's such an honest question, and probably
Hmm.
one that a lot of agency owners ask themselves. As we continued talking, I started asking them different questions. How often do you check in with your caregivers outside of scheduling? When was the last time someone from the leadership team simply asked the caregivers how they were doing? So um do they have opportunities to give feedback? How are new caregivers onboarded after their first few weeks? The owner paused because those weren't things they had really thought about. They had invested
Hmm.
heavily in recruitment, but not necessarily in the caregiver experience after hiring.
Correct.
That conversation really stuck with me because it reminded me that retention usually isn't about one major issue. It's often the accumulation of many small experiences over time. A caregiver who feels disconnected today may still stay another 6 months, but eventually those little frustrations add up. That's why I always encourage the owners to look beyond the resignation itself and ask,
Hmm.
what was this person's experience working here?
Right. Well said. Thank you for that. And well, let's address the assumption though. Let me go into this details right now. Let's address the assumption most, owners might or make first, the moment a caregiver resigns, the instinct to is to say, yeah, they found somewhere that pays more. You know, it is compensation truly the number one or the number one reason caregivers leave, or is it that convenient story that the agency owners or agencies off the hook? You can answer, Ali or Regina.
I do want to say that I went to a conference in San Diego, and I was listening to one of the speakers talk about retention.
Hmm.
And sometimes she gets so it's so interesting how owners see this. They go, oh, well, they just left for $1 more. They went to another agency for $1 more. And I don't understand that. And there's such a disconnect, right?
Hmm.
But I think what I love about what she said was she was like, well, do you remember when $1 meant something to you? Do you remember back in the day when you were young and you were struggling and you just needed a few dollars to put in your gas tank or a few more dollars for grocery? Like I remember back in the day when I moved to Hawaii and I was so broke that I was like low key stealing toilet paper from hotels. And
Whoa.
I
Okay.
remember And I remember sneaking into to use someone's hot tub at one of these big hotel chains and just wondering like, can I even afford this happy hour? I know it's happy hour, but I can I
Hmm.
afford this? Or should I just not even eat tomorrow? And so I think owners have to take a step back and really be able to put themselves in the shoes of their caregivers. A lot of they do struggle with they have socioeconomic barriers and they've
Hmm.
struggled with this their entire lives, and a few dollars here, a few dollars there, it does matter to them, and so we shouldn't belittle that need. And if there's a
Hmm.
way that we can come to the table and meet them there, then we should. I'm not saying we should give everyone raises all the time just because they ask for it,
Hmm.
but are there possible ways that you can tie an increase to maybe upskilling, right? So a lot of
Correct.
caregivers sometimes they are only doing companionship, but maybe they can do more of these skilled activities, like, but they just don't know how. No one has ever invested time
Hmm.
into teaching them certain how to properly transfer, how to use a Hoyer lift, how to do
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z. Like Allison said, are you checking in with your caregivers to see, well, what is it that you want? Um,
Mm.
and I think also one of my coaches, Jensen Jones, said, well, Regina, there's actually a multiple ways to appreciate your people, and it's not always financial, right? Like, of course, who doesn't like a good raise? Who doesn't like a good bonus? But there's also recognizing them. I know, like within our company, ABS, we have this group channel on Slack
Sure.
where we're constantly giving shout outs, giving kudos, recognizing people by name. If we get good comments from our clients, we are posting that on there for everyone to see. I mean, we're almost 400 people. That kind of acknowledgement goes a long way. There's
Correct.
also this competitive nature. Maybe we can have some competitions, friendly competitions, right? Which caregiver is doing the best? Caregiver of the month, caregiver of the year, who has no missed shifts, who's consistently on time to their clients, how many billable hours are they able to help fill, how many shifts were they
Hmm.
have they not never missed. Those are all different ways that we can appreciate and show our appreciation to our caregivers without it necessarily being tied to a financial term.
Correct. That's right. And how about you, Ali?
Um, I think compensation is definitely part of the conversation. I never want to minimize its importance because caregivers deserve to be fairly compensated for the incredible work they do. But from what I've seen working with agencies, compensation is rarely the entire story. I've actually worked with agencies that offered very similar pay rates but had completely different retention outcomes. One agency consistently retained caregivers for years, while another struggled with turnover every few months. And when we look deeper, the difference wasn't the paycheck. Ms. Regina mentioned this before, it was the experience. So one owner made it to a point to personally call caregivers after their first week with a new client just to ask, how's everything going? Do you need anything from us? Another agency only contacted caregivers when there was a schedule change or an issue to address. Those interactions seem small, but they shape how caregivers feel about the organization. I always tell the owners that compensation gets people interested, but the day-to-day experience often determines whether they stay. People remember how they're treated. They remember whether leadership listened when they had concerns. They
Yes.
remember whether someone acknowledged their hard work.
Hmm.
So, yeah, pay matters, but it isn't the only thing that matters.
Yes. Amen. Amen to that.
And Miss
Amen.
Regina does it to us. No matter
Yeah.
how busy she gets, we always get a
Yes.
phone call from her.
Yes. That's really true. A simple text, actually, a check in, it really does matter. Truly agree. And remember that even though this is just my insight, okay, as a current sales manager right now here in ABS, and I'm so proud of it. Even though like a single text coming from Regina, that actually made me like somehow appreciate it. It could be a business text, but knowing that she remembers you like the whole time, like especially in the morning or something like that, even just a simple updates, that makes a lot of difference for me. You know, I can feel that. Oh yeah, I've I feel seen. You know, those kinds of things, small things, and I truly appreciate that. And I cannot agree more on that, Allison. I'm so happy about that as well. And thank you for mentioning that. Now, let's go back to the caregivers now. Um, and then there's like a reason, caregivers never say out loud. let me press that into the deeper into that. Now, not in an exit interview, not in a final conversation. What are those hidden drivers that are quietly pushing caregivers towards the door? So let me hear you about, or let me hear your thoughts on that, Regina.
I definitely think a big part of it is your culture or
Mhm.
lack thereof. One of my favorite quotes is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so, and culture starts where? Not at the bottom, it starts at the top. And so, if you're a type of person, a type of boss that is just super demanding, you don't really care about your employees, you
Mhm.
don't check on them, you're so focused on numbers, numbers, numbers that you forget this is a business of people,
Mhm.
then I think you're setting the tone for high turnover, maybe a toxic environment, right? If you're an absentee owner that really you don't want to deal with anything, you don't want to deal with these hard problems. And on top of that, which is fine, if you don't want to deal with it, that's fine, but you have to hire people that can deal with it. And I'm going to be very honest about that. I
Mhm.
struggle with sitting down and always having hard conversations with my clients. So, what did I do? I
Mhm.
hired Allison to have those conversations because she's very patient and
Mhm.
she's very solution oriented. And to me, I would just get really heated at times. Again, just being very vulnerable here. It's not my strong point.
Correct.
And so you have to hire people if you're not good at certain things to make sure that these symptoms
Mhm.
aren't going to fester into a very ugly problem down the road. But culture is so important, and it's one of the hardest things for an owner or founder or agency operator to do. And I would say, let's start there. Take a big look at what your culture is, what you want it to
Correct.
be. A lot of us, I've been in business for almost 20 years now. I've had the maybe fortunate, unfortunate luck of
Mhm.
having just really bad bosses. I remember coming to work one time and explaining to my boss one of the problems that we were having, and he like really snapped at me. And he said, "You know what, Regina? Why don't you just cry me a river?" And I was so shocked that I literally went into the bathroom and cried a river. I've had bosses just completely close their doors Monday through Friday, would not respond to emails, would not pick up the
Mhm.
phone, ever invested in the time to say, hey guys, why don't we just go to an island for a few days and just chit chat and hang out by the pool and drink beers and sing karaoke all night long? Like those things matter to me because it matters to my team.
Mhm.
But if you don't set the tone, if you're not setting the culture, then I think there's going to be a lot of negative downstream effects of that.
All right. I cannot agree more. And yeah, I truly believe that really matters. And while crying a river, I tried. Well, honestly, I tried that before. Just to relate to you on that, Miss Regina. Um, when I was working abroad, and that industry is actually out of my comfort zone, and that's a different niche. Let's talk about rentals, and I work in sales. Like my very first week, I was assigned to a very not really a very small project, but I understand that's a something that I can start off. However, um, since they trusted me that project, and I actually need their support, and
well, to think that that was like the first time that I've done it, you know, and I never get one. I never get one. I started the project on my own. Like that was I was actually thinking of me relating to you crying a river because as a man, I cried a river that time. Honestly. Then to the point that it took me like 30 minutes to get out from the, from that safe space of the office. And after that though, after that experience, um I got the position, higher position. But crying a river is actually not that as bad, but it reshapes you. That's what I learned, and thank you for pointing that out. Now I remember things, and now I'm a bit teary because that was like a experience for me, quite remarkable. But anyhow, going back, thank you for that, Regina. Now I think this question really is for you, Allison. Knowing those hidden reasons or reasons exist, what are the early warning signs that caregiver is mentally checking out before they ever put into their notice? So, what should agency leaders be watching for?
I've learned not to focus only on performance because disengagement doesn't always look like poor performance. In fact, some of the caregivers who eventually leave are still doing an excellent job. The difference is in the relationship. Maybe they're communicating less, maybe they're no longer sharing ideas, maybe they're solving problems on their own instead of reaching out.
Hmm.
It's the same with my team. It's how I check in with them. One agency owner told me she never complained, so I thought everything was okay. But sometimes people stop complaining because they've already decided they're leaving. So that's why I always encourage them as well not to wait until someone raises a problem. Make regular conversations part of your culture.
Right, right. And also at this moment, Allison, I want to put a finer point on your role here. Because you're uniquely positioned in this, conversation. You're not just advising agencies, you're the person that they're calling when something has already gone wrong. You know, so when agency owners reach out to you and about staffing and retention struggles, what are the concerns or patterns you hear most consistently?
The pattern I notice isn't that agencies don't care. It's actually the opposite. Most
Mhm,
of the owners I work with care deeply about their caregivers. The challenge is that they're wearing so many hats. They're
mhm,
managing
mhm.
staffing, payroll, compliance, client concerns, business development, you name it, because they're constantly reacting to urgent issues. Retention becomes something they only think about after someone resigns. So the agencies that seem to break that cycle are the ones that intentionally create time to focus on their people before there's a
Mhm,
problem.
mhm.
One owner told me something I'll never forget. I realized I knew more about my open shifts than I did about my caregivers. And that level of self awareness completely changed how they approach leadership.
All right. And also, I know I'm bombarding you with questions right now. But let me ask you, what's the thing that catches agency owners most, most off guard when you truly honest conversation with them about retention? Like, what's the thing that you didn't see coming?
Hmm. Well, one common thread I notice is that
Mm-hmm.
agencies do a great job growing the business, but they don't always grow the infrastructure alongside it. They'll bring on more clients and hire more caregivers, but the leadership capacity, onboarding, and operational processes often stay the same. I remember another owner proudly sharing that they had doubled their client census in a year, but later admitted their managers were overwhelmed because the
Hmm.
organization had outgrown the systems that once worked. It wasn't a people problem, it was a scalability problem. Another blind spot is what agencies choose to measure. Most owners know their admissions,
Hmm.
billable hours, and revenue by heart. But when I
Hmm.
ask about caregiver attention after 90 days or which supervisors retain caregivers best, those answers aren't always as clear. An owner told me we spent years measuring how many people we hired, but we never really measured how many great people we were keeping. That mindset shift completely changed how they approach retention because they started treating it like a business metric instead
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
simply an HR challenge. And then finally, I think leaders sometimes make decisions based on assumptions rather than caregiver feedback. They're moving quickly, so they assume they know what caregivers need, when
Hmm.
often a simple conversation provides much better insight. So the agencies that improve retention are the ones that stay curious. They look for patterns instead of isolated incidents. They ask better questions
Hmm.
and they continuously adjust their systems as they grow. And from what I've seen, that's where long term retention really begins.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for that, Allison. Now we now understand why caregivers, really leave the agency or the company. Now, let's talk about what successful agencies do differently. We already identified those issues. And we need now, or right now we need to know what successful agencies do differently. All right, so we have diagnosed rather, sorry, the problem honestly. Now let's talk about what are actually works, and I want to be specific here because our listeners are busy operators, should I say, who needs ideas they can act on, not just inspiration. And now at this point, Regina, you have been in the room and at home care conferences with some of the best operators in the country. When you meet an agency owner who has genuinely cracked the code on retention, what's the first thing you notice about how they about their caregivers, or talk about their caregivers, should I say?
I think some of the most business savvy owners out there talk about value, not so
Hmm.
much about price. And so when we look at their problems and they say, Regina, we want to grow. We want to open up a new agency. We want to go into our third state. I I see my managers and they're exhausted. They're overwhelmed. They haven't had a day off or a vacation in a year. When we talk about solutions, what they're really interested in is the value that we can bring to the table
Hmm.
as a, as a solution partner. Sometimes I can go over in great depth what their problem is. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a solution for you. And they go, well, the price is, it's too high. And
Correct.
then we get to an impasse. And it's a very challenging barrier to overcome, objection to overcome, because it's so funny. You literally just spent an hour telling me how problematic recruitment and retention is for you. And now we're at a point where we're talking about price. And the thing is, though, you can get good or cheap, but you can't get both, right? And ABS
Hmm.
is not a cheap company. We are one of the best solutions out there. And so I think that's a kind of mentality shift that
Hmm.
best owners have decided that I'm going to look for value. I'm going to partner with companies that can solve my problem long term, so I don't have to keep having this problem. As an owner, I wake up every morning and I have 10 problems. And these are the hardest problems the entire organization has, because if they were easy problems, guess what? John in sales would have figured it out. Allison in CRM would have figured it out. Jed, Gobert, all of my managers would have already figured it out. And they don't even need my help, thank goodness, right? But the problems that elevate to the top are the biggest problems that only you can solve. So as a successful agency owner, fix what you can immediately.
Mhm.
The owners that are able to go, okay, let's hire ABS, let's bring on a recruiter, let's bring on a scheduler with them. My team is overwhelmed, let's bring on an on-call team, so they never have to work nights, weekends, and holidays. They've made that decision. We've already pivoted and we've made several mistakes already, and we've pivoted so many different times. Guess what? Your competitors are still wondering if 124 is even doable for them. So again, the smartest business savvy owners I know act with a
Mhm.
sense of urgency,
Correct.
and they understand that I can no longer be the bottleneck of my own agency. I need to build, like what Allison was saying, infrastructure around me to withstand the pressure of home care. Because at the end of the day, home care is a marathon. It's a big marathon that you cannot stop running. You have to go, 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 go. And in order to withstand that, you
Mhm.
have to have the clues.
Right, right. And yes, that's also I want also to relate on that sense, because I've been talking to a lot of people, like business owners as well, and they keep on asking us, like me specifically, how can you help us as a owner? And I want to make sure that my caregivers are somehow well taken care of. Then I told them, this is what we need, or this is what I can help you. This is the best person I can give you, and for sure they can help you when it comes to your caregiver experience, especially when they're calling about rescheduling or whatnot. And once like a caregiver talking to the right person in a very accommodating way, which I believe ABS is actually providing, and I'm pretty sure of that, then that's a time, even that is just a simple gesture. Caregiver will feel they've been taken care of by hiring the right person to talk to them first. Because for me, this people who's you're talking to is a representation of the company that hired you as a caregiver. And that for me, that's very important. Yeah, and also Regina, this one feels like personal, given that your background. How much does it, or does leadership style shape a caregiver experience? When you think about what your family's agency did, or what you've sent, or what you've seen rather, at the highest performing agencies in the industry. So what does good leadership actually look like on the ground?
I think it starts with self-awareness, because if you don't know your own leadership style, if you don't understand what your core values are, then how are you going to lead your company accordingly? Right. And to be honest, everybody is looking up at you. And so there's a lot of pressure there. But I think pressure is a privilege,
Mhm.
right? I've had, again, these fortunate experiences. And what it taught me is how not to be as a boss. What kind of leader do I want to be? And when I say pressure is a privilege, I I have the opportunity to make changes within a company. right? I'm sure everybody that's listening here has had that experience where you're like, hey, I have a great idea and I think this could really help, and it gets shot down. And you're like, do you even want to listen? I put a lot of heart and thought into this. Are you interested at all? And they're like, no. And that's so defeating. And when your best players become quiet
Mhm.
because they just learn that it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter. You care about my company, but I don't care. Then they become quiet. That's a very dangerous place to be in. Um, I think as leaders, also, when we talk about building a team and building systems, it's very hard to teach new owners that you have to let go sometimes. You can't have so much control over things. I think as owners, if we are operationally heading in the right direction, that's all I care about. I'm setting the GPS, but how we get there,
Mhm.
that's on you guys. That's on the leaders that I've hired and trained and poured into for the past 4 years. I want you guys to get us there as long as we're operationally going the right way. I think that's what owners need to understand and focus on, is, and then providing clarity. This was something that I wasn't good at in the first few years. I thought people
Mhm.
were like me, that, oh, if you just tell me what to do, give me very minimal instructions, I'll go with it because I'm okay with making decisions. I'm comfortable making mistakes, and I can get 10 no's tomorrow today, and I'll wake up happy again tomorrow,
Mhm.
waiting for my next 10 no's, because eventually I'm going to get a yes, right? But a lot of people aren't like me. A lot of people aren't like you, John.
Mhm.
And you have to, they say the golden rule is you have to treat others how you want to be treated. But actually, in business, I think the golden rule is you have to treat other people how they want to be treated. And just again, having so much awareness of who you are as a person
Mm.
and the people that you set in front of you, uh, to help guide, to help build your company, understanding and recognizing how they operate, how they want to be treated, how they want to be communicated and managed is deeply, deeply important to the long-term success of your company.
Right. Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy. And I really appreciate that insight. And I hope that the all the listeners right now would understand how impacting that was. That's actually a good message. And at this point, Allison, I'd like to hear your side, or from your side, what does it look like in a practice when an agency stops treating caregivers like, just shift, lift, or fillers, and start treating them like a community? What changes in how they communicate, or schedule, or even check in?
I think the biggest shift that it I think the biggest shift is that caregivers stop feeling like they're just part of the schedule and start
Mm.
feeling like they're part of the organization. You can sit in the way agencies make decisions. Instead of only asking who can cover the shift, they're also asking, is this sustainable for our caregivers? Or um, how does this decision impact the team's experience? Operationally, it means communication becomes more intentional. Agencies explain the why behind changes. They ask for caregiver feedback before implementing new processes, and they create opportunities for caregivers to share ideas, not just receive instructions. Scheduling also becomes more thoughtful. So they try to create consistency with client assignments whenever possible because they know stability benefits both the caregiver and the client. I've seen agencies make simple changes like holding regular caregiver forums, introducing mentorship or new
Mhm.
hires, or most importantly for me, recognition. Um, Recognizing the experienced caregivers as leaders within the team None
Mhm.
of those initiatives are expensive, but together they create a culture where caregivers feel connected to something bigger than their next shift. And when people feel like they belong to a team instead of just filling a schedule, they're much more likely to stay and
Mhm.
grow with the organization.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for that, Ali. And at this point, actually, I want to hear the side of the audience for our listeners right now. Whoever listens to this podcast, I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced this kind of situation? If you have something in mind, you can actually put down a comment, leave a comment below. So that we can get back to you just in case, and also share your experiences, even bad or good. That can at least we can include that in our next podcast. To all my listeners, to all of our listeners, please leave a comment, and so that we can, we want to relate with you or to you. I just want to make sure that we understand your situation, or even just sharing your own experiences. That would definitely give us a very good impression. All right. Now, at this point, I always love anchoring this segment in a real story because data tells us what, but a story shows us how. Can either of you share an example of an agency that made a meaningful turnaround in a caregiver retention, and what did they actually do differently, and what shifted as a result? Who wants to start?
Can I start with a something that we have done within ABS?
Yes, please. I'd love to hear that. Yes.
Okay, because I'm really excited about this. So, ABS has been around for 4 years now, and a lot of this conversation is talking about, retention and recruitment. We invested into the culture index, which allows ABS to use data, to use science, to use certain cognitive behaviors that can indicate success in a role by up to 90%. And it's been a complete game changer for us because I talk about this at conferences. There's this thing called the accidental promotional trap, which a lot of owners fall into. So they think that, oh, I have a caregiver. She's amazing. She's reliable. She shows up. I'm going to hire her to be my recruiter. Well, guess what? The culture index will tell you that is not always going to be successful because what makes someone naturally great at caregiving doesn't
Mhm.
make them great as a scheduler or a recruiter. And now you just lost a good caregiver and you still have a open position for a recruiter or scheduler. And so I think owners need to really look at that. What does success look like in each role? And not always look at your caregivers. I mean, you can always give them a promotion, but it needs to be something within their role. Like maybe they can be promoted to a care manager, right? And that utilizes their natural skills. But even with our own agency, again, having this awareness of what I've been looking for an executive assistant for years. And when I used the culture index to find someone that was very, very similar to me
Mhm.
in the way that she's just a go-getter, she needs very little instruction, she's okay with making decisions, she is okay with making mistakes, that to me made a big difference in hiring. So that's just an example of a good case study of using the right tools, investing in how you hire and manage and train people. And I'm hoping, that the people that are better placed with
Mhm.
this tool are going to be happier. They're going to have better job satisfaction. They're not going to be so stretched and burnt out because they're trying to be someone who they're not. And I think I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Right. Yes. And I truly agree on that part, though. But how about you, Ali? Do you have anything in mind or want to share with us, especially for the listeners?
Sure, John. I remember one caregiver when I was a recruiter before that
Hmm.
shared um what meant the most wasn't the bonus. It was when our supervisor called after a particularly difficult case just to ask how they were doing. I just wanted to highlight again the importance of checking calls. Those conversations may last maybe 10 minutes, but months later or years later, the caregiver still remembered it. And then when it comes to our owners, I remember one that reached out to me, shared that it's time for the recruiter to grow. And so we've set up a meeting. I just wanted to make sure this scope could still fall under the recruiter's responsibilities. And now, after a few weeks of implementing it, the recruiter is now conducting or is now giving the caregivers welcome calls, congratulatory calls. This is great as well because recruiters are the first person a caregiver meets.
Hmm.
So the results weren't immediate, but they were lasting. Over the following months, they saw fewer resignations, more consistent staffing, and stronger relationships between caregivers and clients.
All
That's all
right.
for me.
That exactly the kind of thing I want our listeners to carry with them. Right. Those personal experiences, that is somewhat makes us, oh, not just somewhat, that makes us very relatable, to the people, to our listeners. And I want that exactly for them to hear. All right. Now at this point, okay, closing it out with our quick fire round. All right. One question for each. I want your sharpest, most honest question or honest answer, sorry. No over explaining. Okay. So you guys ready? Okay. Now for Regina, an an agency owner finishes this episode, opens their laptop Monday morning, and wants to do one thing to start changing their retention culture. What do you tell them to do first?
Call ABS immediately.
Yes.
We have a solution for you. You do not need to do this on your own. But also take a deep, long look in the mirror and start creating some self-awareness around the type of leadership you are and the impacts you have on your agency.
All right. Yes. And yes. And yes. That's right. Okay. Now for Allison, you are the person agency owners call when the cracks are already showing. All right. What's the single most important lesson your work at ABS has taught you about what keeps caregiver and what drives them away?
Working at ABS has taught me one lesson that I come back to over and over again. Caregivers rarely leave because of one bad day. They
Hmm.
leave after too many days of feeling like they don't matter. Every resignation has a story behind it, and if we're willing to listen, it teaches us something about our organization. The agencies that retain great caregivers aren't perfect. They make mistakes, they face the same staffing shortages, and they deal with the same challenges everyone else does. The
Hmm.
difference is that they never stop investing in their people. They understand that caregivers aren't just filling shifts, they're caring for someone's parents, someone's spouse, someone's loved one. And I think that's what I hope every agency owner remembers after today's conversation. If you want caregivers to care deeply for your clients, they first need to know that someone cares deeply for them.
Mm.
When caregivers feel supported, respected, and genuinely valued, they don't just stay longer, they give their best to the people who need them most. And that's the kind of impact that changes not just an agency, but the lives of every family you serve.
All right. Wow. That's a very good one. Appreciate that. Okay. Now, off topic. Okay, before I let you go, we're actually now down to our last stretch. Before I let you go, I have a question for you, Ali. What food? Sorry. What food that you can share with your caregivers, just in case you're the owner, you want to share food with your caregivers. What is that?
The first food that comes into mind is again bagnet. But um maybe I'm craving some pancit right now. So pancit that comes with a lot of vegetables and some meat. And I think it's great to share with every caregivers that I would have on my team.
Mm-hmm.
So that that's the first food that comes into mind.
All right. Now for our listeners who doesn't know what are those kind of foods, you can search it out. It's bugnet, it's Bagnet, and pancit, it's Pancit. Those are delicious.
Also, you can put bagnet on top of pancit. So
Oh, I
which will
haven't tried that. I haven't tried that. But I'll do it. I'll do it. All right, for Regina, what is the best place to spend with your caregivers?
I would say let's grab a few beers. Let's head down to the beach. Let's
Mhm.
watch a sunset. Do not talk to me about business. And if we need to ugly cry a little bit, that's okay. That's a great place to do it. Just cry into your beer and everything's great.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that. All right, Regina, Allison, thank you so much. Genuinely, this conversation had a kind of honest or honesty rather that I think this industry needs more of. And here's what I want every agency owners or owners listening today a takeaway for you. A caregiver retention is not a staffing problem, it is a culture problem, and the culture starts at the top. The good news, you don't have to overhaul everything overnight. You just have to start. Make one phone call, you know, and send one message, change one habit. Your caregivers are watching and they will notice. If this episode hit you from home, share it with other agency owners who needs to hear it. And if you want to connect with Regina and Allison at Ascension Business Solutions, their information is in the show notes, or you can definitely give you a phone number and also the website you can visit to. Alrighty. Until next time, take care of your caregivers, and they will take care of everything for you. That's all I can say. Bye, guys. See you next episode. Ciao.